Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Smart Spaces webinar. I thank you all for taking the time to join us today. My name is Graham Martin. I'm the Chairman and CEO of the Enocean Alliance, and I will be your moderator today. We will be presenting for around 40 to 45 minutes, and then we will have about 15 minutes time for questions and answers. So please feel free to type in your questions during the presentation, and we'll be happy to answer them after the presentation. Those we cannot answer in the time, we will also answer per email afterwards. This webinar will be recorded and will be made available online, and all participants will also receive a copy of the presentation. Smart Spaces is something we've been working on in the Enocean Alliance for around 4 to 5 years. The Enocean Alliance was founded in 2008 as a standardizations organization to promote energy harvesting wireless technology into smart buildings and smart homes. And we've been doing that very successfully over the past 12 years. But as I said, around 4 or 5 years ago, we started to move into what we call smart spaces. I think it started with our partner IBM and then has rapidly expanded across the world with companies like Microsoft, NTT, SoftBank, Windshine in China, Engie, IE Connects, T-Systems, Eltaco, Enocean, and many more. So this is something we have been doing for a number of years. It's not something that just popped up as an answer to Corona. We will see in the presentation that the coronavirus situation accelerates the demand for smart spaces, but it's not the reason we started this, and it's not the reason we will continue to do this in the future. So first of all, I'd like to introduce our speakers today. So ask Armin and Tino to switch on their cameras quickly and myself so we can say hello to you. So hello, as I say, I'm Graham from the Enocean Alliance. I'd like to introduce Armin Anders, who is Vice President and founder at Enocean, the company. Armin will be telling us a little bit about the energy harvesting sensors and switches that are necessary for the smart spaces. And also our main speaker today, Tino. Tino, could you switch your camera on, please?
Yeah, I currently try it, but the software won't do it for me. So I just say hello.
No problem. So give us a virtual wave. I'd like to introduce Tino Mager. He's a cloud solution architect from T-Systems in Germany. Okay, so switch the cameras off. So if we go to the agenda, today we'll be talking about smart spaces and looking at applications in the practice, and then also explaining to you how you could become part of this. As I say, we've been working in the smart spaces sector for around 4 to 5 years, and there are many benefits for smart spaces. We'll be coming into this in the applications. There are studies, for example, that say employees who are happy at their workspace, are comfortable, are motivated, are up to 15% more productive. This is a huge advantage for any company. In addition, using space optimization, it's very easy to optimize your space by conference room usage, by desk usage, etc., easily saving 25% space in some offices, and of course the costs. Energy saving is a big one. We'll see it's possible to save 30% of your energy usage by turning your space into smart. And also things like cleaning on demand, which have become very popular because of Corona, but cleaning on demand can also help you to save 15 to 20% of your cleaning costs. as well as the obvious benefits now we see in the time of Corona. So this is what we'll be going into over the next 40 minutes or so. But before we start, we'd like to ask the audience here today a quick question. And the question is, have you already implemented Smart Space solution, or do you plan to do so? If you could all take a few seconds time to click one of the 4 answers here to give us an indication of who we're talking to and what your status is. So please tick one of the 4 boxes here to let us know, have you already used smart spaces, or are you planning on using this, or are you considering, or if you're just here just to find out what's going on. Yep, so please in the next 10 seconds, press one of the 4. Okay, thank you very much. Alex, can we see the results? Okay, no, that's very interesting. So I'm glad to see most are here trying to find out what this is about and how this can benefit. And of course, close to half already considering or already using smart spaces. So Tina, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I'm really glad to see that there are many people today in the webinar that want to inform themselves about smart spaces, and they were considering about smart spaces solutions. And so maybe we can help those people with the decision by giving some of our experience and our customer use cases, and also showing them how an end-to-end solution from the sensor to platform to valuable use case can look like. And maybe after the webinar you get a better view on this and can decide for yourself whether it is something that you want to take advantage of, or that you think in the near future to begin a project or something like this. Yeah, and that's also what you can expect from the webinar today, that we want to give you some of our experience and the use cases that we have done together with customers. And today, with the focus on how can the sensors from the InOcean and the InOcean Alliance work together with a platform solution for smart spaces, and how can the benefits look like for you as an end user. Yeah. So with this, I want to start with the use case of smart office, because as Graham already mentioned, this is the most relevant use case in the area of the InOcean technology for companies. And we started many years ago with working in flexible workspaces and new work environments for ourselves and our company. And with this, we discovered some problems that were shown here in the pictures, the following ones here. We've discovered after working some years in the new working environment that work changes from a classic office situation where everyone has its own office and you know who sits where and where can I find people if they were at work, to I need to search for colleagues and I need to search for free spots where I can sit for the day, because typically in an open space or in shared space environment there were more people than spaces. And so you have to deal with these problems, and if you don't know where each individual is sitting in the open space, then you need more meeting rooms, and you need meeting rooms to meet with your team, and you reserve them to have slots for the meeting rooms where you can sit together and discuss topics. And so these meeting rooms were always booked. And if you search for a spot where you can meet with your colleagues and look into the meeting room calendars, then you identify that this is always booked and I can't have my meeting today, I have to postpone it to tomorrow, and everything around this. But when you go then around and look at the meeting rooms, they were, as pictured here, sometimes quite empty, but were always booked. And so there is some difference between the situation in the booking system and the real physical environment. And we, for ourselves, decided or looked around 2018 for a solution to solve those problems and to have a better open space environment. And for us, the digitization of buildings was a solution here. And with the digitizations of buildings, there comes also the idea of smart spaces. And I've brought here a big list of use cases that you can facilitate with smart spaces in the area of buildings, and that we already have discussed with customers. So this is a compilation of all the use cases, and especially in the office space, there were two most common use cases that each company is, I'm pretty sure, familiar with, and these are the two use cases: workspace and people finder. So where can I find free space in new working environments, and where can I find my colleagues, and also the topic of how can I solve those problems with the meeting room, that they were always booked but sometimes not used, and so were inefficient used. So, and with this, we discovered for ourselves we need some sensor technology, because we don't want to have a new process where people have to do manual work, for example, check in at workspaces and stuff like this. We thought about a real smart space solution where you have an ambient intelligence and people don't need to do additional further steps to, for example, book spaces and check in, and have steps where errors can occur and the data that will be available then is not correct. So we decided sensors would be a better solution. And in our situation, we had the challenge that we were in an environment that was already there and that was not equipped with sensors. And we, for ourselves, discovered that EnOcean is a really interesting technology in this field, because EnOcean comes with a battery-free and wireless technology where we can just plug the sensors into our workspace. They collect data, transmit it to our platform, and then we get a connection between the physical world, the physical workspace, and our digital platform. And so I think it might be a good idea if Armin starts to explain some backgrounds about EnOcean technology and how it's working first, before I will continue to show the use cases.
Tino, thank you very much. Now let's talk about IoT sensors that are needed for smart spaces. There are some useful ingredients. First, wireless, to be flexible and easy to retrofit, but also batteryless to ensure maintenance-free and ecological. How does this work? Instead of batteries, microenergy generators are used. Electrodynamic converters for switches and buttons to move a magnet by moving a magnet in a coil. Solar cells plus an energy store for operation in darkness over several days. Thermoconverter that can even power a mechanical valve, not only sensors, because thermal energy is so energy efficient. Electromagnetic converters for current measurement of a power cable. On the following slide, please find benefit and sensors for space utilization. Let's start with benefit of smart spaces. 25% space savings have been realized in real projects by desk sharing. This already should cover the cost of smart spaces installation. Considering 45% of the office space is typically unused before Corona, this is a nice potential. And already cost savings is an additional cost saving is 5 to 15% increase in productivity, stated, for example, by Mark Jewell. This is awesome because productivity has even a factor 10 higher impact on office costs, since salary costs are typically 10 times higher than office space costs. Office space costs are mainly rent and utility. High potentials, which are preferred as employees, strongly require flexible working models. This fact alone makes it considerable to invest in smart spaces. Finally, personal distance and hygiene can be secured by smart space applications. Smart utilization makes people counting essential for smart buildings. 4 types of sensors are needed. First, utilization sensor for detecting desk occupancy or utilization of other objects. Second, an activity sensor. Activity correlates to people count in case of people are slow moving. Door contact. This works well in case of low people flow, typically at restroom doors. And fourth, a passage sensor. That is needed in case of high people flow, usually through floors or shop entrances. For room occupancy applications, I would like to mention the occupancy sign. Colors of the LED bar can indicate room booking status, free, occupied, booked, or cleaning needed according to activity count, or no entrance according to people count. Of course, this LED bar with integrated radio receiver that's permanently running needs low voltage line power. Environmental sensors increase well-being, measuring CO2, temperature, humidity, light, noise, etc. There are further environmental sensors available that are not mentioned here, for example, for carbon monoxide, particulate matter, and VOC. All this overview on sensors for smart spaces. Now back to Tino.
Thanks, Armin, for the introduction to the sensors part. And as promised, I'd like to show you now how can we stick the parts together and connect the sensors to a platform that gives us real added value on the data of the sensors. For ourselves, we have developed a framework, we call it Smart Spaces Framework, that helps us to deal with those problems that we have in the physical workspace. By adding sensors in the workspace, as Armin mentioned, we were easily able to retrofit our workspace environment with the Notion sensors. We just brought them in, put them at, for example, desk occupancy sensors at the desks and activity sensors within the meeting rooms. As you can see it here on the left-hand side, this is some screenshot from our portal. And those sensors were now keeping track on the physical utilization of the workspace. And those sensor data were collected by gateways, the Notion gateways that sends the sensor data then to the cloud. And our solution runs on the Microsoft Azure cloud, because the Azure cloud gives us the ability to quickly spin up new environments for smart spaces, customers, and new environments that we want to connect, and also gives us with the Azure platform services secure and easy to use services, so we don't need to have to develop everything from scratch and have long development timeframes, but we can use, for example, the Azure IoT components to just connect the gateways to our cloud solution and have this secured by the basic platform components of Azure. And on the other hand side, after the telemetry ingest into the cloud, we've developed our own software based on this data. And the raw sensor data is brought by our framework into a digital twin of the physical workspace. So we have a hierarchical digital twin of the workspace available within our cloud platform that represents always the real-time or near real-time status of the workspace. For example, as you see here in the screen, if nobody sits in the room, then all telemetry sensors submit that there is no occupancy, and we bring this information in the cloud to the information that no one is sitting in this room and there is free space. And as an end user, I know when I search for free space, I can have a look at the dashboard and can go to this space and sit there and work for the day. And also correlations between data will be represented within this digital twin. For example, if there were various sensors, as in the left room here in the screenshot, were available, for example, an activity sensor and CO2 sensor, and also the window contact sensor, then we can correlate this information by having the information if the windows were closed and the CO2 sensor sends the data that it is too crowded in the room, we can notify the users within the room, for example, to open up a window because there were bad air quality and such use cases. This is all realized by or on top of the digital twin and the telemetry data updates that were coming in from the sensors. And this is on the one hand side a good database to realize use case, but in the end the real adding value features were those use cases that were implemented for the employees that were working in the workspace. And as one example, I'd like to show you a live demo of our integration part of our employee app. So I switch over to the live dashboard that you should see now. This is the digital representation of our physical workspace and how it is utilized currently at the moment. And as you see, there's many free space currently. It's typically because of the Corona situation that's also affecting our offices, where we have limitations on how many people were allowed to work in this space. But I can promise you, typically it's more crowded here, and nearly everyone or nearly every place is red, so every place is occupied. And just by the sensor information, if in this situation where a high occupancy is in this area, just by the sensor information, you were now available to, or we were now able to look at this dashboard and see, okay, there is still one free spot left, and I can go there and sit there and work for the day. And this is some part that is integrated within or can be integrated within any employee app. And this is just picturing the digital twin of the space and the transformed information from the telemetry data to the really valuable information of single desk availability. Yeah, I think this was a first example. I will show some more later. But first I want to switch over to the other use case I mentioned in the beginning of the smart office use case, which was the better usage of meeting rooms. And here some same model like for the single desk usage works, because it's the same platform. We just use another sensor, the passive infrared sensor from an ocean that we plug on the ceiling of a meeting room, and this sensor detects activity in the room. And within our framework, we receive the sensor information and bring it into the information that this meeting room is currently occupied. And you can see some statistical evaluation here on the left-hand side, where I matched the sensor information that were in the upper lines showed as the yellow bars. This is the information from the sensor when it told us that there was activity in the room, and the other green bars are the slots where meetings were scheduled in this room. We extracted this information from the Office 365 room booking system, and now since we have brought those both pieces of information together within our framework, we were able to detect that, for example, the first meeting here in the first green bars, there were no activity in the room at the same time. And so we see there was no meeting happened, but there was an appointment within the schedule of the room. And so we can now decide to, for example, delete this meeting or ask the guy who is invited for the meeting whether it's still necessary, because if we don't need this meeting in the schedule, then we can free up the space for other team members that can use this room in the time and really sit together and work there. And a second example you see later in the day, there was a second meeting, and this was really used by people because there in this time frame there was activity in the meeting room, and so you can say this was an efficient meeting and the space was used efficient. So this is just an easy way, just by plugging in one sensor and transforming this data within the digital twin to valuable information, how you can better utilize your spaces. And by this space utilization use cases, I think we'd like to come to a next short survey where we'd like to ask you on how much you think an office is typically in use. So how much space of an office is typically used. So I've talked a lot of offices and that they were crowded typically, but there were many surveys around companies, and many studies on how much space is really used within the company and whether it is typically more, as you see it here, 90%, or that is typically less, as you see 60%. What do you think? Maybe some seconds for your selection, and then we look at the results. So now we can see the results, and many people think that is typically a low utilization of the workspaces, and I think they're right. They're pretty right. Graham mentioned it in his introduction that there was a study from IBM that tells 60% just is used from company space, and the others unused. So there is a real quite good room for optimization. And within the with those use cases that or with the use cases of the smart office that I showed you previously, I think it can be something done to make this percentage of space utilization bigger. I think today within this Corona situation, that would be really hard, and it's okay that just small parts of companies were used because all of those social distancing restrictions. But I think this won't be relevant, or there will be some time where those restrictions will not be relevant, and then it's better to use more space within your company than less space, because empty space just costs money that can be saved and used for other things within the company. So I think we now go to the next use case that is really quite correlated to all those space utilization cases. It is the smart facility management and cleaning case. And this is something that came up for us. We first focused on how can we make the employees more efficient and solve those problems that we have in our workspaces. And then we implemented the solution. And after running it, the sensors sometime in our workspace, we noticed that we have a good basis of data with the historical data that could be also relevant for our facility management and also for customer facility managements. Because if you know how your workspaces were used, then you can, as facility management, supply better or more efficient workspaces to your employees as they need them. A simple example here is if you know that typically each meeting room is overutilized because they were always used by people, and some office spaces were not utilized very often, then you can think about to move from an office space to an additional meeting room and give the employees more space to meet, for example. Yeah, and this is also something that we have reflected within our smart spaces framework. And here you see some features of the framework, but I think it's better if we switch over to the live dashboard and have a look at it, what is currently happening within our office. I think you should now see the live dashboard. Here, the first view that I'd like to share with you is the sensor view, to give you an impression which amount of sensors we have equipped within our offices. And you already see that currently the live data is transmitted by that some of the sensors were sending or were changing from red to green or vice versa. And this is just the most sensors that we have here is from single desk occupancy. So those sensors transmit data to our platform about the which single desks were used and which are free. And also some other sensors transmitting currently data to the platform. And what we do with this data is that we integrate this in, as I told you, in the digital twin and in the really valuable information. So for example, we transform the raw sensor data where a sensor just transmits, for example, on the single desk vibrations. We transform this data in an occupancy level. And this occupancy is shown here, where we transform those raw vibrations that just telling us is there something happening at the space. And this can also be wrong data, because if something walks beside a desk, then there is also vibration. And this is not just an indicator for occupancy, but we implement an algorithm that transforms those single vibrations to an occupancy level. For example, a simple way is to do this is to say if there were 3 vibrations on a single desk within 5 minutes, then we can assume this desk is really used by a person and it's really used to, for working, and then we say this is occupied. And this is shown at this map here. And what we can also do within the digital twin, as I told you, is that we have a hierarchical model. So we can also aggregate this single desk occupancy, for example, to a room utilization. And then we see in the next map here how utilized are our rooms at the moment within the last time slot. And then you see colored here from green to red, which are the lower utilized rooms, like the rooms here on the right hand side, and which are rooms that were used quite often. And this is also updated as you see it here just right now. And this information is really valuable on the one hand side for facility management, because as I mentioned in the beginning of this use case, if I see here that my office spaces were typically not so much utilized over a longer time, and my meeting rooms were utilized very often, then I can think about switching one office space to a meeting room. Or if it's vice versa, if I have meeting rooms that were not used very often, then standing empty for longer times, then I can think about to switch them off, maybe to a creative area or to another office space or something like this. And based on the sensor information, you can better get a better understanding of how your workspace is utilized and how you can transform it to supply a better working environment to the employees. And also on the other hand side, also on the employee information side, it is really interesting to get, for example, the information on how utilized were the rooms. Because for myself, I can say if I have to do a very focused work for the day, then I'm really interested in this data, because I don't want to sit in a hotspot area where everyone is coming in and out and walking around me and talking. If I need to focus and do my work, then I just want to know which is the workspace that is typically not so crowded, and where can I sit to have a quiet place and work focused on, for example, reading anything or something like this. And then I can, as facility management, supply this data also to my employees, so they can be more productive for the day and know where they can find spots where they can work focused on topics, or also where they find some colleagues to exchange about what's currently happening in projects and things like that. So maybe this can be also useful information for the employees itself. And what we've included also in the framework is something that is also relevant for facility management, some statistical views on the data. Typically, we discovered that in customer projects, customers have systems in place for facility management and data evaluation. Some systems that making statistics on those parts. And so typically we just ingest those statistical data into the systems that were in place at customer side. But for the demo today, or for our own workspaces, we use this open source software that's showing us the telemetry data, and that gives us an impression on what insights can we get from the data. For example, this is a view from the middle of the last year that I looked for, and here we can see this is an activity index here below here from the room, where you can see when was activity in the room and when was it free. You can assume this is, for example, a meeting room. When was the meeting room used? And we have the corresponding CO2 concentration in the room, and by that we know which levels of CO2 in the room is good and which is not so good to have effective meetings. We can compare now on a visual way here the information on when was the borders for inefficient meetings hidden, and does this happen very often? Is this meeting room often in a bad situation? And do I have to maybe think about redesigning the room or making it just a smaller meeting room to have good air quality conditions for this meeting room? This is something that you can get from the I would say raw data, where you can just have an impression by yourself on looking at the data and also identifying some correlations between data. You can also, for example, here see some correlations on how single desks were used and in which time frames and things like that. This is something that you can get from looking also at the real sensor data, not just from the digital twin data itself. Yeah, I think it's maybe something that you see not just slides, but has something also from our experience and how we are working with this solution. And what I also wanted to show you is some other use cases on the employee side, how the information from the digital twin can be used, and also the real-time information can be used. And this is a little bit correlated also to the Corona situation that we have today. But we started with this topic also before the Corona situation. And first, I'd like to show you the left-hand side of this picture, which shows a mobile app that is tracking or keeping track on the utilization of the company canteen. And we started with this topic that we tracked the activity in the canteen by the time slots to identify the most crowded times and giving the information to the employees so they can decide by themselves, do I want to go now where the most crowded times were, or do I just wait for an additional hour where I see it's just half of the current traffic within the canteen, and so I just save some time by not standing in queues and things like that. So we implemented this application, collected data over several time, and were then able, you can see the actual data here in the screenshots with the magenta bars. And after several time, we were able also to predict the upcoming traffic by the historical data. And this is what's pictured here by the blue bars, which shows the predictions for the day. And so if I start in the morning, I can think about, do I want to go to the canteen this noon at 12 o'clock? There is predicted a maximum volume of occupancy, or do I then better take something from the shop and have lunch with my colleagues somewhere else? So this is the information that makes the employees, I would say, more satisfied, because they were not in the traffic of the noon time, and they have the information available whether it's worth to go the long way to the canteen or whether it's worth to have just a quick noon break or lunch break, and then save time by not standing in queues and things like that. And based on the same data that we have available for this application and also available within the digital twin, we were also able to realize something like social distancing controls, as you see here on the right-hand side with this traffic signs that now we're showing outside the canteen, whether the people count within the canteen is too high, whether it is too crowded, and you have to wait outside until there is some new space, or whether it's okay to go in and do not overcrowd this, or do not come into too much contact with too many people. So this is also some application that helps to deal with social distancing. But I think in the near future, it also will be used again for the indication whether people, when there were no more thresholds, I would say, for the people counts, it could be also used to indicate whether waiting times and something like this outside of the canteen. So it's not just something that is relevant for the Corona case. Okay, I think this should give a little impression on how you can then, based on digital twin data, implement use cases that were really helpful for the employees, also supply them as a facility management to your company, and in the end, making your company for employees just more attractive. So this is also for many companies the case today, that they want to be an attractive employer. And with those systems in place and those smart workspaces, I think you're today a really attractive employer. So, and now I'd like to hand over to Armin. I also already mentioned the Corona situation, and I just think he just wants to add some words about cleaning and hygiene from a facility management perspective.
Thank you, Tino. Cleaning and hygiene is getting very important also with respect to Corona now, but not also to Corona. 20% cost savings is possible through demand-oriented cleaning according to ThinkIt. In addition, IoT solutions ensure the evidence of performance of facility management, respectively service transparency. Suited sensors for office rooms are people activity, desk or device usage, and service call that is needed for extraordinary events. Sensors for restrooms are door contact that provides people count, service call, dispensers providing filling status, and or door locks providing lock status. According to unicef.org, to wash hands is the most important way to avoid virus propagations. Essential for this is to ensure the proper level of all the washroom dispensers, disinfect, soap, towels, and paper. To avoid virus propagation, service buttons that don't need hand contacts are available in form of proximity wall buttons or foot switches. Now let's come to energy savings. That is another or the third key application for smart spaces. We will do a quick survey or last survey. How much energy can be saved with smart spaces? Is it 0, 10, 20 or 30%? Simply click your favorite. That's a good question that often has been discussed in the past. Let's shortly wait for your answers. So everybody has answered more or less. Please show the results. 30%. Yes. The answer is single room control saves up to 30% energy. This has been proven several times by real installations. Next page, please. Yeah, on the right button here, you see a source, and this is one well-documented example where you can find in detail the ratings of the study. Because 99% of the real estates are existing buildings, considering an average lifetime of 100 years, it's evident that you need easiest to retrofit solutions also for the actuators. The thermal-powered wireless heating valve actuator, powered by the physical temperature of the radiator, and this means there are no batteries needed, and it's a maintenance-free solution also for the radio device. For locations where you don't heat with water, you can find controllers for variable air bands, for example, North America, or for electrical heaters, for example, France. You see on this slide further key sensors for energy savings like thermostats, like presence sensors, magnet contacts, and electrical meters. So to give you an impression about the system, and you can use these sensors also for other applications. So combine the sensors to get different applications around smart buildings.
So thank you, Armin, for the introduction to the sensors. I think, yeah, it's better, as you mentioned, to show some of the applications in a real situation. And I'd like to share it with you again within the dashboard that we have. I will just zoom into a specific room that we have equipped with energy saving controls. And as I mentioned previously, we have installed within a single office to test those use cases window contacts. We have an activity sensor within the room. We have this heating valve control, and we have energy switches. And what we can do when we bring all of those single sensor data parts together is that we can, for example, decide if the activity sensor detects that there is no more activity in the room in the afternoon, for example, everyone has gone to home, and the office is empty, then we can automatically detect this within the digital twin and send an information to the heating valve control, telling that it to switch off, and also to the electric switches to switch off the power supply, and so energy is saved within this office. And if there is activity again in the room, then we can power it up again. And what we can further do is also do something like if the windows are open, then we don't need to have the heating up and running. So if the windows were open over a longer time frame, then we can shut down the heating control, so energy is saved there also. And from time to time, if we detect that it is or that it's helpful to have the historical data evaluated, we can implement machine learning on the typical office usage, and also then after this, we know when the room is typically used, and can just, for example, in the winter months, spin up the heating just before the first one will be predicted in the room. And so for the employee, he doesn't need to come into the office where it's cold and wait in half an hour or 1 hour. Still, it's warm enough to have a good comfort situation within the room. We can just do this by leveraging the collected data and bringing them together. And this is just a simple application of those technologies for energy savings. And you don't need to invest first a lot of money into an intelligent building automation system that realizes these features. You just need to plug the Ocean sensors and actuators into the workspace, and can have it up and running within, for example, 1 week. This is, I think, a really good advantage in the field of energy savings to get also quick wins in this area. So this was the last part I wanted to add to the energy savings topic. And after we've shown you the use cases, we just want to add some words of how can a project look like. And just to give you the feeling that it is, as we showed with the live demos and also the example use cases, that the smart spaces topic is nothing that is just will be in the future available, but it is just something that you can do today. And we want just to give you an hint how you can start with those projects, and how you can start for yourself if you want to decide to invest in a smart spaces project. So we've shown here a typical roadmap, I would say, for the smart spaces projects that we have done since yet. The typical situation is that we have customers, as you today, as you said in the first survey, that were interested in the topic and wanted to know what is possible and what can smart spaces do for my company. And so we typically start with a one-day workshop, or if the customer has already some specific ideas, also with hackathons that should give something like an envisioning to you as customers, to show you what is possible. And then after this workshop, I would say a broad band of use cases, and you can identify which is relevant for my business, which is relevant for my employee workspaces, and can decide which would be a good use case to test in a proof of concept. And I would always recommend to do first a proof of concept for smart spaces technology, because so much company infrastructure and so much company processes were involved into a smart spaces project that it makes each project individual. So each company is different in how their processes look like. For example, processes and systems on booking meeting rooms. This is always an individual setup, and also company policies plays a role. For example, if you detect that a meeting room is booked but not used, then each company has a different policy what should happen. Some companies say just delete the appointment because it's obviously not needed, and some companies say, okay, no, we can't just delete those appointments. We just notify the inviter of the appointment, and so this is something that you should test out within the proof of concept setup, where you just connect a small piece of your working environment, also with the technology, also to see how it works with your infrastructure. And then if you have it up and running in the proof of concept, you can just think about to scale it out to the broader workspace. And therefore, in our solution, the Microsoft Azure Cloud is a good platform for this, because if you implemented the POC with the Smart Spaces framework, then you just later need to add additional sensors to the workspace, and everything else is up and running. You just scale out the sensor solution and have it the processes and everything else around already in place. So it's not just that you make a proof of concept, throw it away, and implement a real project. You just scale up the proof of concept to a real a productive solution, just add support and things from your IT department and facility management around, and then things are up and running for a productive use. And then we typically recommend to review the productive environment and just make an iterative process to think about enhancements of the solution. What are the benefits that you can give to your employees by just adding more, for example, use cases to the solution, and whether it is worth to do this or whether it's worth to postpone it and better take the budget and use it for other improvements in the smart spaces area, because this is also something that we have experienced in projects, that not each use case is as relevant as for the other company than for another company. So as I already told, each company is individual on these points. And to give you an impression on how a smart spaces pilot or proof of concept can look like, we have included, together with the Ocean Alliance, this pilot offer here, where we said, if you want to start, for example, specific in this Corona situation, and you think you will be ready for the upcoming new work world, where remote working would be or would have an more relevant part in the daily life of employees. And if you want to be prepared for this, then maybe such pilot offer will be something that you would like to try. And so we have included it here in the presentation. I think it's too much to read every point now. You will get the slides later. And if this is something interesting to you, you can come back to us. You will also get our contact information. But the point here is that we can offer you a package for, I would say, 3 offices and 1 meeting room, where you can test and try the most relevant use cases from Smart Office, the workspace availability and also the meeting room availability, and see how the benefits could look like for your company and in your individual setup. So, and as I mentioned, this is an offering that we do together with Ocean and the Alliance. I would like to have Graham tell us some words again about the Ocean Alliance as a conclusion for today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tino. Thank you very much, Armin. Very interesting. Reminder, if anybody has questions, we will have a few minutes at the end for questions, so please feel free to type any questions in. So just summarizing, yes, the Ocean Alliance, we are a standardization organization with more than 400 members, and we have created the international standard for energy harvesting sensors and switches. It's an IEC ISO standard. And I'm very happy to see some of the real applications and some of the real products available on the market. And thank you to Tina and Armin for showing us today. So again, thank you very much for all participating. We have about 5 minutes left to go through a few questions. We have many questions already here. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in as well. First question here I see would probably be for Tino. It's about data privacy. Tino, what is your experience with real installations about people having occupancy sensors on their chairs or on their desk? Is there not a uncomfortable situation here, knowing that people can see when I'm at my desk, when I'm at the coffee machine, when I'm at lunch, when I'm at the toilet? Can you share some of your experiences here, please?
Yes, of course. This is a good question that's always coming up when we talk with customers about the topic, because it's a very sensitive topic that people can be or think that they would be tracked with the sensors when they were working or when they were not at their place and something like this. But in the end, it's just an open space workspace, and so you have no information who is sitting where in a basic setup. If someone needs something like a people finder, then it is some information that you allow it to give out and to be identified where you are sitting, but a typical setup doesn't include this. And the in-ocean sensor technology gives us some advantages because it's with its low power consumption. It's just keeping track on, for example, vibrations at the desk and activity impulses within a meeting room. And this data is not person related. So you can't just from a vibration cannot identify any person. And so also for workers' councils, this is a quite good sensors or quite good sensor technology because of this not person related data. So I think in the end, when we don't need to involve personal data, this is no problem about data privacy.
Okay, thank you, Tino. Here another question. Do you have any successful use cases for restrooms? I think I can maybe quickly answer that. Yes, there are definitely dozens, if not hundreds, of successful use cases for restrooms. For example, we were on a webinar yesterday with our partners in Great Britain, IA Connect. They have done the restrooms in Gatwick Airport in London. Or we have our partner in China, Winshine, who have done multiple projects in railway stations, airports, etc., with an app from Tencent. Also in Japan, we have projects with NTT and SoftBank doing restroom management. And one of our alliance members in Germany is CWS, who have a complete digital restroom program. Tina, have you anything to add there? Have you done any restroom projects?
Yeah, we're currently in discussions with CVS to integrate also their solution because of the Corona situation. Because if I were able to integrate those this information about the filling levels, for example, also for sanitizers, then it's really relevant to tell this also for employees. For example, if any sanitizer is empty, then I can tell them where is another one that is still available. So
okay, thank you.
Also a really relevant use case.
One question to Armin here. We see a door lock solution within ocean energy harvesting technology. Is this product available, and can you give us some information about it, Armin?
Yes, this door lock is available. It's from Schulte Schlagbaum, an alliance member, and they have units for office doors and separate units for restroom doors. They either announce the handle status or the lock status. So yes, very nice products available there.
Thank you, Armin.
If you need more details, please send me an email.
Okay, 1 minute, so we have one last question here. I see the other question we will answer per email afterwards. And there's a question, what gateways do we use for gathering all the data? Tina, would you like to say something about this?
Yes, of course. There were various in-ocean gateways available also from Alliance members, and we use the best matching gateway for the customer situation. As I mentioned, each customer situation is individual. Some allow us to plug in the gateways into their corporate LAN networks, and some say, no, this is not an option and we need to go for wireless. And so there were different gateways available. I think you will find them out on the Alliance site homepage. And I can also recommend to use different gateways for the best matching gateway for your individual situation. And if you need any assistance with this, let's discuss this.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you all for participating. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. As I say, we will answer the additional questions per email afterwards. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Armin. Thank you to everybody for participating here. I hope it was interesting. And if you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to contact us. We'll be very happy to work with you. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. I wish you all a nice day. Bye-bye.